recipe from the recipe book, and it's called Calacata Gold. It's black and white marble, has a little gold in it. Today we won't be doing any gold, we just like the black and white effect. It's a very expensive marble. And we're going to be using polar white, mortar gray, smoke, and we've got some mixing containers, a rubbing stone to knock the little burrs off here, brush, a roller which we're going to use to put the primer on it, because the first thing we're going to do is put the primer over the top in white, because we're looking to do a white background. Of course we need a torch, and there's our epoxy. And for cleanup we're going to use some denatured alcohol. The tools we're going to use for the application, of course, is a chip brush like we normally use, and we're going to use this small, thin brush. It is called a script liner, and you can get these at an art store. It has very thin, fine bristles that we're going to use to kind of create a marbly effect. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the stone and just make sure we don't have any burrs or anything else like that on there. We want it all to be fairly flat. Then we're going to take our single component primer, which is made for going over coatings, and we're just going to roll that out over the whole thing, because we're looking for a white background. We're very white. We're going to let this dry. It's going to take probably 20-30 minutes to dry completely, and then we'll get started coloring. But I think we're looking for a nice even coat across the whole thing. Just nice and even. We don't want any roller marks. So now we'll let that dry for about 10 or 15 minutes. Okay, now that that's dry, we're going to put the marble effect on there, and we've gone ahead and heated up our epoxy in a bucket of hot water. We're just going to check and make sure that we are in the range that we're after. Each of these, we want it between 85 and 90 degrees. It flows out real well. It marbleizes. It does those sort of things that you'd want it to. I recommend some gloves because I don't like getting myself all sticky. And I'm going to mix about a quart of epoxy. So we're going to take this. Take our A first. Then our B. We're going to make sure that we've got equal amounts in there. So we started out with equal amounts, and after we let that settle down, we expect that it's going to be an equal amount in there. I use the inside of this. There's a measurement right here. We can check that as a guide, but we are more concerned about what this looks like. So we're going to take our epoxy, and we're going to take, this is polar white, it's a dispersion color, and for each 10 ounces we're going to put in 1 capful. So in this case we're going to put 3. Mix that in real well. So what we've done is we've tinted our epoxy white. Just want to mix it thoroughly. There's really not any preset amount of time that we want to mix it. We just want to make sure that it's thoroughly mixed, and with the color in there, it makes it really easy to tell. So then we're going to take our smoke and we're going to pour some of that on this plate here. So we can pick it up and use it. We're also going to take a little bit of mortar gray. The smoke is an acrylic color, the mortar gray is a dispersion color. Just a little bit of that on there, on the plate, and then we're going to set that aside for a second. We'll take our chip brush and we're going to spread the epoxy over the top of the whole board. We want a nice thick coat so that we can get the marbleizing that we want. We want it to flow real nice and easy. So we go ahead and put a nice thick coat on the whole thing. You can see with the white background and the white epoxy that it really does a nice job of being very white. And if you were not to put the white substrate down there, then you'd see some of the color beneath it, which we don't want to happen. So we're going to go ahead and spread that all out. Coat on there. We make sure we get our finished edges done real nicely. Get them all covered. The other ones we'll get some epoxy on there as it runs across. We want to make sure our finished edges are completely covered. Brush just a little bit on here. The edge, we'll go ahead and get the back edge in a minute. And then if there's any spots that you might have missed, you can tell by if there's any indentations, we just go ahead and fill those in. Save a little bit if you can, so that if there's any question that you might need some in a minute. So then we're going to take our chip brush that we were using, and we're going to dip into some of the smoke, and we're going to kind of lay some veins in there, some bigger areas, and lay the veins in there first. Get the majority of it in there, and then we're going to come in and kind of blend this back and forth across there to create an interesting some of this back and forth. So you can see that the boldness of the veins remain, but we end up with some ghosting of the color, so that we're getting a nice kind of a random color across it. So we do that with the chip brush, and then we take this is our scripting tool, and then we're going to just take this and lightly we're going to kind of drag drag some of this through there where the bold part of the vein is. Just creating some boldness to it, some depth. Right in the middle of the deeper parts there. Some here and there, give it kind of a little bit of an interesting effect. Just flick a little bit on here and there. Now we're going to take a clean chip brush and we're just going to kind of that in a little bit. And it kind of starts to do its own thing as we're going across here. As the epoxy sets up a little bit, it starts to just get real interesting in the way that it looks here. Kind of lines and streaks and things like that. Then we're going to take the torch, of course, as we normally do, and we pop some of the bubbles. Let that sit for a few minutes, and then we'll end up probably playing with it again just real briefly. All right, we're back. We've let that sit about 10 minutes or so, and then somewhere where we put the speckles, where we flick the speckles on there, if you leave that color too bold right there, it could form a little crater sort of a look. So we take the brush and we just kind of work it in just a little bit there and kind of create an effect. If there's any of that occurring, we just take the dimple right out of it and kind of move it around a little bit and make it kind of an interesting part of the pattern. There's not really a lot of that to do here, but just be aware that there might be. Depends on how strong your speckles were. Then we can take the torch again because we've got some bubbles. We need to take those out. But also we're going to take the torch and kind of move some of the color around a little bit and create more of an interesting look. And then we'll be done. And then tomorrow we'll just scrape the bumps off the bottom and maybe hone it, depending on if the customer wants it shiny or matte. We'll hone it a little bit anyway, but we can hone it straight down to a matte. This look would look fantastic like that, but we'll decide what the customer wants. So anyway, right now I'm going to take the torch and take the bubbles out, and we'll be done for the day.